right, so here with Danno, My Son the Hurricane, Vegas Funeral Records. Thanks for coming, Dan.
Feels good. Thanks for having me.
We're here at Freshly Squeezed Studios with our boy Jay Baty.
Woo! I haven't been here in a long, long time. It's good to be back.
All right, so let's get started. What's the advantage and disadvantage of touring such a large act?
There is a lot of things to square away. So you have to think of all these things that you have to take care of, and it's the financial side of things, the booking side, and really the logistical side. So meaning flights and accommodations, drive times, visas, things like that, per diems, making sure that there is, everyone's mental health is doing well on the road. There's a lot of things to take care of. Now, the good side of having such a big band that, for better or worse, is very loud, is that you do get a lot of attention. And a lot of fests see that it should be a band that closes things, and that's been really good for us. Now, of course, it's expensive. It's expensive to have a big group like that, and there are just a lot more things to constantly be thinking about than that you don't have to think about when you have a four-piece act.
Awesome. All right. Lots of hate for Spotify. Where do you fall on it?
Yeah, Spotify, they certainly deserve some of that anger that they get, I think. But me personally, there's a couple things I think about it. Is that, I'm a 90s kid. That's when I really started playing music. And I know that if I could have had my music in anyone's pocket at any time, that would have meant a lot to me. And that would have been very helpful. Now, do they pay enough? Absolutely not. There's no way. But logistically, for someone like me who needs a lot of metrics in which to sell us, all over the world, Spotify has been really helpful in that way, in what they collect for us. So although it can be mostly bad, it's great too. And I have discovered a lot of great music. So it's hard for me to totally decry something like Spotify.
I like it. So just fresh off tour. Fresh-ish.
Yeah.
Long one for you, but I know I'm sure you're already planning. Where are you touring next, and what are the logistics like?
So today, actually, in a few hours, we'll announce our first London, UK show. So next year is a lot of the United States, the United Kingdom, Scotland being part of that, of course, and Wales. We also have Lithuania on the books, France, Belgium, and these things are all subject to change. We just got back from Mexico as well, so it's always learning these new visa processes, what are the logistics. One of the good things about coming from Canada is that you've been dealing with such a vast area. And Europe is so much smaller, and you can get from country to country so much quicker, which is really nice. Now, obviously, there's some language issues, and there's all sorts of things to contend with. But this next year will be a lot of Europe, the United States, and Canada as well.
Right on to the next one. Agent versus manager. What's the difference in those two hats?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, agent versus manager. What is the difference? So an agent's job is solely booking, whereas a manager's job is anything that furthers the career of the band. That's an important thing. So I do all those hats for Hurricane, but we have started to have agents in different parts of the world because that's what they know better. So for me, trying to book Germany would be really challenging, whereas there's people that's what they focus on. Management can involve a lot of things, and it can involve PR, it can involve trying to radio track, and all sorts of things like that. I get this question a lot from young bands because I have a label, which is, do I need an agent now? And the most likely answer is no. It's not ready just yet. I like to say the optimistic answer is not just yet, you don't need one. So we usually tell people to start building up 5 markets. Maybe if you're from around my area, that would be Toronto and London and Windsor and Ottawa and Kingston or something like that, and continually go back to those so you can start to build that sort of thing. Your hometown, as much as we love playing our hometowns, everyone does, is not always indicative of how successful you'll be, because people are invested in who you are as a person and those relationships that you already have.
While we're on the topic of label, first off, how long have you been running your own label?
I started Vegas Funeral. It's been over half a decade now, and it started because we had smaller labels coming towards us, and as I was reading the contracts, it really became clear to me that we were not always on the same page, and I really wanted to do things in a different way. So we started this little label. I didn't intend on having anyone else on it, but that changed, and I started booking for about 15 or 16 acts and putting out some records here and there.
Oh, that's awesome. Kind of on that, is that owning your own label? That's how's it helping your acts?
It's great. For Hurricane in particular, it's nice because we're not biting off a chunk of the revenue for the label, for the management, and for the agent fees, right? Like a lot of the bigger acts that you enjoy are. So because of that, that's another one of the ways that people are that we manage to pay such a large band. And further to that point, I get this question all the time, which is, how does anyone get paid in such a big band? And I'll say this, that it's actually, I found it to be way easier. I've played in a lot of 4-man bands, and it's great and it's a good time, but it's really hard because there's so many of them to go out and get paid and to really command a top value. Now there are bands who do it, and I think they've definitely found the sweet spot, but I was never able to. So that's one of the ways that it really, really helps us. I also don't take quite as much of a percentage as I think some of the other labels are, because it's not my only source of revenue. So that's also a nice thing. And it's nice to be able to help your friends if someone has a project that you think is really neat and would probably not get any love somewhere else. Like when we were talking about Dr. Future in the Gush Room. one of my new favorites.
Yeah.
It doesn't have necessarily all the commercial viability.
I'm in. I'm invested.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm in hard.
So, your other life as a mortician.
Yep.
Mortician versus band leader. What's it like balancing the two?
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are really surprised by that one, which is fair. So, my life is kind of split in two, which is this, there's a big tour season every year, and that's basically from, I would say, April to October. And then there's the off season, which we do still play, but it's much more sporadic. And that's when I go back to death care, mortuary work. And I like it, but it's definitely jarring for some people to hear that sort of thing. Maybe it's because I like the quiet and it gives me time to think about, all these logistics I have to do. But, I think music, in some ways, whenever you have to be in the music business, the actual business side of things, it's very self-serving. Whereas death care and things like that are, this is really helping other people. And especially there's no one that's more vulnerable than a deceased person. So I take that really, really, really seriously.
That's very good insight. That's definitely contrast.
It's a big contrast. It's certainly a big contrast.
Especially the funky, My Son the Hurricane.
Yeah, I know.
It very is. I was very surprised when I first learned that about you. Back to the band though. What's the toughest aspect of managing such a large group on tour?
Like I said, there's just all those boxes to check. And so, you get a show offer, do we have the bodies to do it? Is the money there? What are the logistics of it? Are there visas involved? Do we want to do more touring around that area? Is this something that we think will help the band? There's all sorts of things that you're always considering. And sometimes when people see our tour routing, they think, you must be crazy. You're in Toronto one day and Baltimore the next day and Edmonton the next day. That has a lot to do with where the money comes, where the opportunities are, and, you know, did the flights work out? There's just so many things to, you know, always be considering. And then there's the very human side of it, which is maybe you're at the Continental Breakfast one day and you see someone looks like they're having a tough time, and you're trying to work on all of that. And it seems strange that tour could be hard on someone, because it is a lot of fun, but it is hard. You're away from your family and you're battling things like boredom and loneliness, and you know, you get this intense high for 90 minutes a night. So there's a lot of stuff to really contend with, you know, and I'm always learning, you know, I'm always trying to make it better and learning from other people who are in the business side and other band leaders. And I like to think that I'm doing pretty good, but there's always more to learn for sure.
Very cool, man. So what advice do you have for young bands and musicians who want to start touring? Any first steps you'd advise?
When I said earlier about a few markets, that's a good way to start. You know, we call them milk run tours, where people can go out for 2 days. You know, they're not leaving their job. You know, it's not super expensive, because at the beginning, you know, you can't command a top dollar or much of a dollar at all. So this is a good way to get in the van with your friends and start making music. You know, anyone who's ever been on even small tours know that it's a ton of fun and it's a great thing. But one of the things I say to small bands all the time is that you need to consider the business part and practice that as much as the music part, which is not fun to hear, and I understand that. But there's always things happening. And one of the things I've constantly taught myself is that even if the band has stopped right now, the ball is still rolling, because you need to always have things in motion for the next thing that's down the line. I'm a list maker. That really helps me throughout the year. You know, I'm filling out actual physical calendars that I buy at the mall. And that sort of thing helps me, because it reminds me that I want to be applying for festivals, and I want to be applying for these things and grant stuff. And, you know, we should be booking at this time, and we should be looking at flights at this time, and visas take X amount of time. So there's always these things to consider. And I know it sounds exceptionally unmusical to do that. But I always remind myself that all this work will end in the gig. All this work will end in us walking on stage in front of people we want to play for. And that keeps me doing it every time. That, and because I'm kind of nuts and nobody else wants to do that work. And that's fair. I can appreciate that.
You gotta have one of them, right?
You have to have one of them.
All right. We've got a couple more questions for you.
There we go. There. I was dying there.
Yeah, a couple more questions.
Sure.
Who are your top musical influences? How have they influenced your journey?
You know, I don't want to be one of those guys who always goes back to the albums of my teenage years in my early 20s, but here I am. So, you know, I grew up listening to Primus and Bad Religion and things like that, and metal. And even I've noticed that even the terrible pop songs of the 90s now have become horribly nostalgic for me, and I love them. So that sort of thing. I definitely realized when I listened to Primus albums that I am a thief and I steal every what I thought were original drum part, you know, from them. And so there's definitely a lot of those things. What's neat is, you know, when you have a band, of course, you have people who are coming in and exposing you to new music. Some you love, some you think is terrible, but that's a really important thing. I've always really liked odd things, you know, and that was Primus and Devo and Mr. Bungle and those early Incubus albums, which are pretty out there. I really, really liked that. And that stuff made a lot of sense to me. And of course, you know, things that were just popular at the time, you know, and I'm always trying to listen to new playlists and get into newer music, which is not always easy for someone of my age, you know. But I'm always happy whenever I do find something that's new and someone brings me in new stuff. So I really like Tora Imoa's stuff. My friend Oscar showed me, and I like July Talk, and but I still, when it comes down to it, kind of go back to Jason Isbell, kind of go back to Smashing Pumpkins, kind of go back to Primus. It's just one of those things. It's the comfort food of music, and sometimes you just want those things that you know so well. But I am open to always finding something new.
Amazing. That's it's so different from the sound of my son. I mean, yes
Yeah.
and no, because there is that heavy aspect too. That's what I think is so awesome about my son. It's got. I mean, I'm a funk boy. We grew up funk. That's but it's got that heavy. That was the same thing when we played. Was you have to have that driving bass and drums, right? And
Yeah.
you got that heavy. Get the crowd moving, get the heart pumping. I love it. Where are we? As someone who started your own label, what do you look for in artists that you want to work with?
I think there's a few things that I'm usually looking for, and obviously I gotta like the music, but the main things are two main ones, which are not entitled, because you really don't want to have artists who you are managing the personalities of them as well. That's really tough, Some people think they're deserving of things before they put in some of the work. The other thing is the drive. People who are out there doing it. If you didn't help them, they'll go find someone else or they'll do it themselves. I'm always open, even if I don't have a band signed. I'm always open to help, because I know how hard this is, and there are so many arm folders. In the Niagara region where I live, one of my favorite acts is this act called Minuscule, and it's this all woman choir, and but there's some hip hop elements, and there's some just really very intensely, beautifully written songs. Just blew me away when I first heard the album. And now I've been somewhat aggressively helping their band leader book shows, because I like them so much that, I really want to make sure to be able to help them succeed in any way that I can. And so I'm always sending texts saying, did you apply for this? Don't forget. And things like that. It's very difficult to have a label now. It's in the way that it used to be. But what's really nice is that there is a place for all the music now. It's just finding where that place is. And to think that you need a label is not the case anymore. The playing field in many ways has never been more fair. And love it or hate it, the nice thing about Spotify is that, you have the Beatles and you have Tool and you have all these things, but on the same point, my music's on there and your music could be on there. And if your grandma records a song, she could put it up there. And I love that sort of thing, that whereas before, you had to like physically press a CD, which was expensive for people to do. And a lot of music, I think, because it didn't have the money behind it, wasn't able to be heard. So in some ways, I think all the streaming is a good thing. I think there is some good behind it. And I am always discovering new things. And it's also nice because I definitely remember going and buying albums to find out they were mostly terrible. And whereas now, that is one of the beauties of streaming. Now, of course, we have, shorter attention spans and things like that, and it's a little bit harder. But it is an interesting time for music.
All right, so viral. You had a video that went big this year. Can you give us a little insight?
Right. So I'm not huge onto social media, and that's probably a little bit of my age. Something that happened to us is we are not content creators per se. I think there's a lot of people who are constantly creating for things like YouTube and TikTok and things like that. We had a festival in northern Alberta that recorded our show and released some clips on their Facebook. And this one 20-second clip started going viral on Facebook first. And that was kind of unbeknownst to us. We were on tour. You're not really paying attention to that stuff. You're just trying to wolf down a continental breakfast and get to point B. And then Instagram picked it up, started doing well there, and then started doing well on TikTok. Now, bear in mind, we hadn't even posted this yet. We since have. And then on Twitter. So, again, I've never really been on Twitter much. I understand that it's where, people really dunk on each other on there. But, I really had a crash course in Twitter. And it was strange. We had this video that I think accumulated between all those sites about 30 million views. And that is a very strange thing. Partially, I like to joke that the band became a one-night, a 10-year overnight success. Because all of a sudden, you had offers coming in from all over the place, which was great. You also had hate coming in from all over the place, and you also had love coming in from all over the place. And what I really learned is that not to pay too much attention to either of those, because the love is short-lived, and the hate is short-lived, and they're on to the next thing soon. And I didn't really, I would read one or two comments, and that was plenty for me. But when people ask me what it felt like, I think it was a little unnerving because you don't have control of this thing anymore. It's, a part of the ether now, and that was really strange to me. And it wasn't our point. We always used to joke that, well, the good news is we can never go out of being cool because, we were never cool in the first place. And to all of a sudden to experience some popularity, no matter how short-lived, was very bizarre. And it was interesting. It was interesting to find that what we do is so jarring to some people and so important to some other people. It was a very odd. I'm glad that it was short-lived, and I start to understand. Luckily, we didn't take too much interest in it. We just kept going, head down, doing what we're doing. Didn't engage in that sort of stuff. If people want to say nice things, that's lovely. If they want to say tough things, that's also okay. That's the internet. And if you are the kind of person who's going to put anything out on the internet, well, thick skin is part of the deal.
I 100% agree with all that, because it really is a wild place these days where people will fight tooth and nail for something, that they just watched a 20-second video on. And
one of the things that I thought was really interesting was how many people kept bringing up political affiliations. Like, they must vote this way. And I was like, wow, that's so bizarre.
That's such a strange,
it's like,
it's like this music.
It's like 12 seconds of people dancing, and it was really odd.
Yeah, and again, you're putting on a show, right? That's they want you to be somber up there. It's just such a strange place. But 100% what you said. Shut out the noise. Focus on your craft, and that's the main thing. Right?
Yeah, and it's not real.
No.
And it really isn't real. And when you get off the road, it becomes clear what's real. Yeah. The people who actually care about you as humans, and who can you call if your car won't start? There are real people out there. So.
Absolutely. I love that. All right, so we got 2 left.
Sure.
What are the future aspirations for My Son the Hurricane?
Right. Yeah. The future. It's it's always hard to say, because I feel like every tour year, we have ideas and we start putting things into motion and getting tours together, and then a phone call comes or an email comes that screws everything up because it's a cool offer and you start going somewhere different. That was like Mexico this year, and like Victoria Ska and Reggae Fest this year. These were ones that happened late, but we really wanted to do them, so we have. I think that going into the States a lot more, we were really amazed at how many people were showing up. It's we plan to play to a lot of quiet rooms. And that's part of any band going anywhere. So we were really, really fortunate there. I think after our experience in Sweden, which was so intensely positive, we really just want to keep going a little bit further, and taking care of each other. That's really, really important.
Absolutely. There we go. I think that is one I missed. Talking about Sweden, is that one of the main things that stick in your mind from this last run of shows? Was there another one? Is that the?
Yeah. So I there were so many great shows, right? And often, we forget, and then I'll start looking through the tour list. I'm like, oh yeah, that one. That was a great show. I think some ones that stand out to me were North Country Fair in Northern Alberta, the one that took that viral video, and really, really helped us out in the West. Victoria Ska and Reggae, I loved that one. That was a wonderful one. When we went down to Sacramento, and San Diego, I was really surprised. Like, there were so many people and sold out, and what a wonderful thing that was. And people who knew the songs. It was just so bizarre. It was really, really bizarre. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it was massive success or anything like that. These are smaller places, but we felt really, really good about it. And when we played Sweden, we did very, very well, and that just showed us that it can work other places. That's really what this all comes down to, is you want to know if it can work somewhere else. As I said before, playing your hometown is wonderful, but people there are interested in you as well. So to go somewhere where people don't have a reason to like you or blow smoke is really, it really feels good that you might be on the right track to do something.
That's amazing, man. Last one. Same question, but for Vegas Funeral.
The future. I think we just want to continue to be a little label that could. When I hear music that I love, that nobody cares about, or people are, I think maybe some of the people I gravitate towards are people who don't have a lot of business acumen, who are creating great music, and they're trying to get it out there, but that's just not where their talents lie. That's when I like to come in, because I'm definitely not the most talented musician or writer. I always joke that Hurricane is not, it's not like we're writing Bridge Over Troubled Water here. And in the same way, I really think that I just like to be someone who is just a little bit of help for the underdog. And, I don't have huge aspirations for it. I'm just happy to have this little niche. And I'm really happy that it lets us keep control for things like My Son the Hurricane, for some of the other acts as well. And for the acts that have yet to be discovered, it's an exciting thing. It's also exciting to me when new bands come to me and just say, hey, we're not ready for any sort of label stuff yet, but are you interested in hearing some music? Of course. I'm always interested in it. Sometimes it's awesome. Sometimes it's terrible. Sometimes it's just terrible, and I love it anyways. And that's really exciting stuff. I'm really glad that Vegas Funeral is a part of my day-to-day. It's just such a... it's not work to me. That's the sort of thing that I'm happy to do, even if I was to work a full day doing something else. I'm always happy to open that email and see what's in there and see what else we can do to further something.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm so thankful you came in.
Yeah,
Thankful you and Mr. Baty, Jay Baty from Freshly Squeezed. It's we've been watching you. We've been in the scene together for such a long time.
Time.
It's just awesome seeing you guys. I saw that viral video